to Education News 1. I'm Kiri Hope, and tonight we'll be covering these stories: Christopher Columbus in schools, reducing the achievement gap, and what detracking math classes might have to do with it. Stay tuned for these and other stories on Education News 1. Good evening, I'm Kiri Hope, and this is Education News 1. In tonight's first story, in 2003, the National Assessment of Educational Progress reported that the average 8th grade minority student performed at about the level of the average 4th grade white student. Are schools failing minority students? Researcher Richard Rothstein suggests that there are other factors at work. According to Rothstein, professional parents speak more than 3 times as many words to their toddlers every day than welfare mothers do. And at 4 years old, children of professionals have vocabularies that are twice as large as their impoverished counterparts. While these figures are alarming, even more so are Rothstein's revelations about the health needs of low-income children. Poor children have twice the average rate of severe vision impairment. Even if their vision problems are diagnosed, they less frequently follow up or obtain prescription lenses. This obstacle would make sitting in a classroom every day and trying to complete coursework nearly impossible. Even if low-income children receive the glasses they need, they have dangerously high blood lead levels. Rothstein reports that they have high blood lead levels at 5 times the rate of middle-class children. These levels diminish children's cognitive abilities and come from the students' houses, which may have been built before the ban on lead paint and aren't repainted often enough to protect them. Do Rothstein's findings mean that there is nothing teachers can do? Certainly not. While programs are needed to provide health services and safe housing, our schools can make an impact too. Teachers and parent volunteers should ensure that low-income students receive the same after-school and summer experiences as their middle-class counterparts. Rothstein notes that students gain self-confidence and an awareness of the world from organized athletics, dance, drama, museum visits, and other activities. Teachers should consider the educational purposes of coaching a team or sponsoring a club at their school. These activities will help students inside and outside the classroom. To make a difference in your community, visit the websites on your screen to volunteer or donate. Coming up next, will detracking classes equal student success? Find out after the break. Tonight, the school board will consider a proposal to detrack high school math. We'll be covering the meeting live, but first, let's find out what inspired this detracking movement. Researchers Frank Grossman and Jacqueline Anses presented the findings of the South Hills School District Action Research Team. The team, composed of educators, was tasked with investigating how to remedy the achievement gap between white students and students of color. What the South Hills team discovered was concerning. Black and Latino students were less frequently selected for accelerated math classes in all grades. Worse yet, the selection process was, quote, ambiguous, inconsistent, and heavily reliant on individual teacher judgment, end quote. These findings alone demand an immediate overhaul of the tracking system, and detracking should be one of the options. But what role do individual teachers have in student achievement in math? The South Hills team conducted interviews and discovered teachers' early labeling of minority students as, quote, weak in math, unquote, was key to their underachievement. Students are living a self-fulfilling prophecy after they are told by teachers they are not good at math. The deputy superintendent who led the research team stated that every student identified as having trouble in math told a story of a teacher who told them they were not good in math. And it's true, they would tell us. I'm in a low math class. Of all the things we did, it was the interviews with these kids that led us to the idea that we cannot allow our kids to believe they're mathematicians or not when they're 8. End quote. To ensure that students don't feel labeled and discouraged in all school subjects, including math, teachers should avoid ability grouping in the elementary grades. Instead, differentiated instruction will allow teachers to respond to the need of every student while maintaining an inclusive, supportive classroom. Tonight, we'll be following the school board as they consider the D-tracking proposal. But even if they choose to keep the current tracking system, teachers can be mindful of how stereotypes might be affecting their recommendations, as well as their interactions with students. Teachers are on the front lines of the educational battlefield, and it is their duty to uphold the ideals of multicultural education and social justice, even if their school board doesn't. For Education News 1, I'm Kiri Hilt. Coming up, what your child's school isn't teaching about Christopher Columbus. Good evening. This is Education News 1, and I'm Kiri Hilt. Education News 1 was recently tipped off by a concerned citizen that local schools were teaching a very Eurocentric version of Christopher Columbus's travels. Apparently, the 4th grader came home and exclaimed, "I want to be an adventurer just like Christopher Columbus." Later that evening, while reading the biography of Columbus, the child could be heard saying, "Take that, you terrible Indians, this land belongs to Admiral Columbus." Education News 1 went to local libraries to discover just what kinds of biographies these children were reading. In all of the books we found, Columbus is portrayed as a brave, noble adventurer. The stories of the New World inhabitants, and even the crew that sailed with Columbus, are hardly mentioned. According to educator and author Bill Bigelow, the greed that motivated Columbus's journey is often left out in favor of religion, curiosity, and adventure. In fact, according to Bigelow, Columbus is often portrayed as a devout Christian, which discourages children from questioning any of his actions. The story of Columbus, according to Bigelow, may be the first encounter between two people, us and them, where children learn that God is on our side. That seems to justify any action. A few of the biographies mention Columbus's slave raids, but none represent the humanity of the natives. Instead, the books seem to foster callousness towards suffering. The problem, in the eyes of this reporter, is that Columbus's story has been elevated to the level of benevolent mythology. Teachers believe that students are not ready for stories that involve greed, slavery, racism, and imperialism. Although this early indoctrination into Western colonialism and racism is most likely not purposeful, teachers must take action to prevent it. Although it is not in teachers' power to choose which books are available in school libraries, they can teach students to question why this book is written like it is and who is left out. Students may be invited to write their own biographies of Columbus from the point of view of the Indians or the crew. This multicultural approach will ensure that students question injustice in history and in their modern world. Reporting for Education News 1, I'm Kiri Hill. Thank you for watching Education News 1. Please stay tuned for other multicultural education news.